Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Night Raven. I know this podcast has been very sporadic in the past, in a couple of weeks or months, but lots has happened, and we'll be back on track. Today, I actually have a very good friend of mine with me. She's been on the podcast before. She's just very knowledgeable, and I'm so glad that she can always make time when I ask her. And everything happened really on short notice. This topic or this podcast episode just popped into my head 2 days ago, and I'm just lucky that Grace was like, "Sure, I'll be on. I'll talk about it. This is the best time to talk about this." And thank you, Grace, so much for making the time on a Sunday and joining me to talk a little bit about the current state of the world and what the Akashic Records have to say to that. So, but I'll let you introduce yourself because you have um, so many things that I don't want to leave anything out. You're just so good at everything.
Well, thank you. What a beautiful introduction. And I am very pleased to be here and so glad it worked out on a Sunday
Yeah,
afternoon.
yeah.
So, this year is my 25th year of working in the Akashic Records, believe it or not,
Wow.
and my 15th year of teaching others how to work in the Akashic Records. And I just realized that about a month ago as the new year came in, like, oh my goodness, it's a pretty big milestone. So, very apropos for my life, certainly, but even for this topic that we're talking about today, because in addition to doing Akashic record readings for others and teaching others how to work in their Akashic records, I love to lead meditations in the Akashic records, and I've just started doing that to a wider audience, including those who don't know how to open their own records, because for a long time I led meditations just with students who do. But now I'm leading meditations where I open the records of the group, and I'm really wanting to focus on these times that we're in, so to speak. And so I love your topic is very apropos.
Oh,
And really, I would say there's never been a better time in the history of the planet, really, and as well as our individual lives, for us to connect with the Akashic records, given the changing times we're living in, precisely because the Akashic record is the realm of the soul.
yeah.
And we all are a soul and we all have a soul, certainly. And the soul is such an important aspect of who we are, but we also have this very important human element who purposely came into not only this denser energy of the third dimension on this planet, but who intentionally came in to this day and age to be here alive and well right now when so much is happening.
Yeah.
And I'm just, that makes me excited in a way to think, wow, I am still alive because my soul wants me to be, because my soul wants me to be here contributing to life, to consciousness, to the changing times we're in.
My
And that's
gosh,
what
yeah.
inspired me to start leading this meditation um, on. So I just want to say that, first of all, we don't have to just turn to the Akashic records to get guidance from our soul. There's many ways to do that. And I know you've covered that with other guests and in other ways on your podcast too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our soul is us and talks to us every day. Sometimes we hear that guidance a lot more loudly than others. But at the same time, working in the Akashic records, because it's the realm of the soul, it's just this perfect place, this perfect resource, this perfect energy and energetic, this vibrational field that we can access to hear even more clearly and loudly the guidance of our soul. But I also want to say that it's so helpful to connect with the Akashic record, not just for guidance, as wonderful as that is, but to really stay in the consciousness where we are so in alignment with our soul, where we're so in
Yeah.
tune with our soul, that we're much more in that natural flow with it. And we are just always assured that our soul has our back and our soul's always going to guide us right up to the moment of our death. And, whatever, whenever and whatever that might be. I just find that so reassuring that as much as we in our human existence might feel like we're all alone, we're not all alone. We always have our soul because, of course, we are our soul, but I refer to it in third person because it's a very important aspect of us. But We also have a vote, as I like to say, with our human consciousness to not tune in, to ignore, to not cultivate a relationship with our soul, or to cultivate it daily. And
Yeah.
so, all of those reasons, I love working in the Akashic Record because it's such a great forum to connect with my soul.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really lucky that I actually found you and I found my way to learning how to be an Akashic record reader. I feel like this has really blown my mind wide open. But also, I feel like it gives me a responsibility. And sometimes I struggle with that responsibility. I feel like as a light worker, I always have to have the answers. But I realized lately that I guess I don't always have to have the answers, and, um, I turn to the Akashic Records for the answers or for the guidance, and especially in this world right now where every time I feel like I turn around or I turn on the TV, there is something else like breaking down. It's sometimes it's very discouraging, and I feel like the Akashic Records are here for me or for everybody else to just find some answers or some guidance, like you said. And I'm just really lucky that I have this tool to guide me through this life because it is frustrating sometimes, especially right now in this state of the world. Um, I feel like the current energetic theme of humanity is what I'm heard from the Akashic Records earlier is like, I feel like humanity is at a threshold moment. Do you think that it's a collective initiation into something different? Because I feel like old systems are collapsing, all the power, the control. I feel like the records also show a fracture between fear and awakening. So I think we're like right in the middle of that. Um, there's also, I feel like, a massive identity shedding happening globally where I feel like we're being stripped or we're being shown who everybody is really. Do you know what I mean? Without the pretense of it's almost like we're being stripped away, the masks that people, gave themselves or had. And it's really scary. It's really scary to see what's underneath all of that and where we're going. And I feel like as a light worker, what is mine to do in this world right now? What am I here to do with the knowledge that I'm able to access? What can I do? What can I do to help myself and what can I do to help others to go through this shift right now?
Oh, I love it that you're asking that question, Bettina. I ask it of myself, but also of my soul on a regular basis, because as I said a minute ago, if we're alive right now, and we
Yeah.
clearly are, our soul wants us to be alive. And when I read the news, it's very easy to go into fear of World War III or AI, or, there's a lot of reasons to go into fear. And yet I don't want to, but I also know like that serves no one. And it certainly
Yeah.
doesn't serve me to go into fear. And so even as I read the headlines of news, I always try to have like one foot in the world of reading and one foot in the realm of my soul, just saying, either what would you have me know about that? And sometimes it's exactly as you just said, like when all the Jeffrey Epstein things are coming out and people are having to resign left and right, I'm like, wow, how fascinating that this is the catalyst for so many masks to fall. And so sometimes it's helpful enough just to hear that. But always, especially if I am tempted to go into fear of whatever might really turn the world upside down and impact my life as well as everyone else's, that's when I especially want to ask my soul, what's helpful for me to know? And I'm alive right now. What is it about you still deeming that it's worthwhile to be alive? How can I make a difference?
Yeah.
And where I always go in my thoughts toward that is really asking myself, what do I want to create? If things are changing and we're in transition, what do I want to create in the new? Because it's one thing to say, oh, dear soul, please help me stay in peace and calm amidst all the change. And that's a wonderful thing. But that's almost saying, help me not focus on what I don't want to focus on or what I fear. I also like to look at the other side of that coin, which is, and what do I want to create? Because I do believe a big reason why all of us are here, but especially light workers, to use your term, is to co-create, is to create a new future, a better future. if you want to take it out of more spiritual terms, like in astrological terms, we really have entered the Aquarian age. And it's not, and the Aquarian age is supposed to be a time of love and light and equality and justice and so many positive things that we have not known for this last 2,000-year Piscean age that we've been living in and moving out of. And regardless of whether you say, well, this is just part of the Aquarian age, or if you say something more like, wow, we are on a fast track to change or either super evolution or super de-evolution, if it were to go that way, I just feel like, wow, how exciting that we're alive right now. Let me do everything that I can in my little life and my little world to contribute to a consciousness of what do I want to create and co-create in conjunction with my soul and in conjunction with the larger collective, if you will, the larger collective unconscious or superconscious. Because to me, it's not just idle daydreaming or, ignoring the bad in the world. It's really recognizing that if enough of
Yeah.
us really were in a collective together, we could make a change. And that enough of us doesn't have to be the majority, but it does need to be the tipping point. And actually, Bettina, I was thinking about this before we began today, because you spent the first part of your life living in Germany, and I lived in Germany, and I was in Berlin when the Berlin Wall was there. And so I really saw, first of all, the heartbreak of that, how it divided
Wow.
families from each other, but it also divided a city, between the haves and the have-nots. And just for the people on the east side of the wall, it was a tragic thing. And yet, as a student,
Yeah.
when I was there, I totally accepted, well, this is the way it is. It's here. It's always going to be here. So when President Reagan made his famous speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear that wall down, I, in my, youth thought, oh, that's never going to happen. That's a pipe dream. Well, maybe it was a pipe dream, but it's a pipe dream that actually happened.
Yeah.
And I think it happened pretty quickly from the inception of someone saying that to when it actually happened, not just because Ronald Reagan willed it. I mean, there had to be Gorbachev, but the people in power under him, there had to be others willing to tear that wall down and make a real difference. And yet, I think it was for that particular topic, a tipping point was hit, and then it happened quickly. And I remind myself of that when I think about everything so much bigger than the Berlin Wall that we're facing in this world, whether it's wars and rumors of wars, whether it's artificial intelligence, laying off millions and taking over the world, or all the things that you read about artificial intelligence can do, or whether it's climate change, like there's no shortage of things to be worried about. But that's when I always think, well, I can't single-handedly stop a war in Ukraine or anything else, that's at the world level, the global level, but I certainly can focus my
Hmm.
consciousness on what I can do to make a difference, to be part of a tipping point to bring down any new proverbial Berlin Wall down. And that just excites me. Like there's power in that,
That's
there's empowerment in that, there's agency in that, so that we don't have to just feel like there's nothing I can do and the world is, turning upside down.
You're right. You're right. And when you were talking, I was thinking about you know, all of that what you just said, and I feel like spirit is always talking to me. So I feel like what I just tuned in while you were explaining all that, and thank you for doing that. I was a little too young. I mean, I remember the fall of the Berlin Wall, but it's not something that I actively watched or witnessed. I just saw it on TV and I'm like, okay, let's just go out because, it was my time to, have a good time on the weekend. So it wasn't really so much in my consciousness, but thank you for explaining all that. But I feel like what I'm hearing from spirit is, I always feel like, again, as a light worker, that maybe we need to save the world. We need to do something. But I really also feel what I'm hearing right now is like, we're not here to save the world. We're here to anchor the frequency. So I guess we make progress and then we put our stake into the ground and we won't go back. And then we
Beautifully
make
said.
more progress. We put our stake in the ground and we won't go back. We're anchoring the frequency and we speak our truth no matter what. And we hold compassion without collapsing in fear. And I really think this is what it is, where we don't have to magically change it, but we're also not going back. We just put our stake into the ground, and we're not backing off. And what I'm hearing from spirit is, again, it's like you're not here to carry the world, but you're here to stabilize the frequency of a new one. So I think we're making space for what's coming, and we're holding the space so the new can come in. Do you think?
Oh my gosh. First of all, so beautifully said. Yes. I mean, your words really are inspiring to me, as well as I'm sure to your listeners, because first of all, isn't that a relief? We're not here to save the world. We don't have to carry the weight of that
Yeah.
responsibility or even that desire on our shoulders. We're here to be. And when you were talking, it reminded me so much of one of my most favorite passages by Eckhart Tolle. If you know him, he wrote The Power of Now, but also his second book, A
Oh
New
yeah.
Earth.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The very last chapter talks about there are some people on this earth who are frequency holders, and that's exactly what they're here to do. Their outer life might look very normal or mundane, where they hold a boring job, or maybe they're a monk or a nun, so they're living a cloistered life. But no matter what their outer world is, what they're really here to do is
Right.
hold a frequency to anchor it in, exactly to stabilize it, as you said. So well said. And we are doing that. I think, since you referred to light workers, I think no matter
Yeah.
what light workers are here to do in the form of energy healing or speaking or a million other things, they're here to hold and anchor and stabilize that a higher frequency so that higher possibilities can come through. And that it might sound silly, but that excites me. And we could use some excitement, to counterbalance just the heaviness of what's happening around us. But for me, it's exciting because, first of all, it gives me hope,
Yeah.
and it gives me hope not only personally, but for all of us. But it also gives me what I like to call agency. It gives me a sense of empowerment that there's something I can do, but also something that I am doing, that I am holding
Yeah.
that frequency to the best that I can. Maybe some days or hours deeper than others, but just as you said, there's no going back in the outer world. I try to remind myself there's no going back in my inner world. I don't want to slide back into total sleep or non-awakeness, or maybe that's not even a word, non-awakeness, but consciousness is really what I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
want to keep
Being
building
aware.
on
Correct.
high, going higher than that, and that's really what motivates me every day. Whether it's motivating me to meditate or to read uplifting things or to read the news, but read it in a prayerful mode where I'm praying for the world or I'm blessing the world. No matter what I'm doing or whether I'm walking through the woods, I just really want to be conscious of the fact that I am here holding a frequency, and that we all are. And I want to contribute more and more to that higher frequency. And
Yeah.
working in
Yeah.
the Akashic
You
Records
know
is
what I'm hearing from
especially
spirit again? Yes, that's correct. Yes. Again, what I'm hearing from spirit is like they keep talking, while you're talking, I feel like, it's just, they're just giving me something of a reassurance, and then,
yeah.
I get those messages. But what I'm hearing is like, there's like two timelines right now. I feel that we're like, one is breaking down, but the other one is building. And it's like, um, both timelines exist at the same time. And I think this is where I feel very, not overwhelmed, but it's like, okay, what do I do first? Do I worry about, the one that's breaking down, or do I, put my attention to the one that's coming? But really what the soundbite that I'm hearing also from spirit is like, the Akashic records show that the future is not singular, it's responsive. It's where we put um our attention, our focus, I guess, so should I like let the old one fall away? Obviously it doesn't serve us anymore, and maybe it needs to go, and I'm just focusing on what's coming in, on the good, the good that we can create together as a collective, something that works for all of
Oh,
us,
I
and I
totally,
feel like
well
where
said.
we put our attention, that's where it grows. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, which is why I said a minute ago, where I want to
Go ahead.
focus on is what do I want to create, not what do I want to protect myself or shield myself from, but what do I want to create?
Yeah,
Because at the end of
exactly.
the day, we are. incredibly
Mhm.
creative. I mean, we are creators. And you know that famous Marianne Williamson quote about we're afraid of our
Yes, yes.
creative capacity. We're afraid of we're less afraid of our inabilities as we are from our incredible creative capacity. And maybe we have good reason we've created things that are not so good, but it just always shows me, and we still have the same creative ability to create more of what we want in the life. And so why not put your attention on that? Why not let the old fall away? Do your best to keep yourself stable by cultivating a relationship with your soul, by doing the things you know to do to stay in peace and harmony, but at the same time focus on what you do want. Because
Yeah.
even if we all want a world of peace, or where everyone has enough food or water or love, even if that seems so unattainable for any one of us, I want to say every single little thing that we do toward any of those goals makes the difference as one drop in the ocean. And you know, whether it's well, any of those things, but in a microcosmic example. And the thought that comes to mind is, if you've ever seen a lake or a river or any body of water that has dried up, then you really realize what an impact that just a few drops of water make in replenishing that body of water. It's we really do have an impact. And I absolutely believe that's why our souls wanted to come in human form in this lifetime and at this day and age. So everything you said, I certainly
Yeah.
agree with.
I agree.
And we have so much power there. We just either don't remember it, or we're afraid to seize it, to grab it, to step into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know. Well, I feel it myself, but I know as a light worker, I always try to, put the best version of myself out there. And a lot of times it's just there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of grief and anger. And I think we as light workers, we feel that sometimes. I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, you're so wise, you're so aware, and you've been doing this for so long, you must be always happy and joyful, but it's not like that. I mean, I feel like as a light worker, we're more empathic
I was just
than
going to
maybe
say,
some other people that are not aware, and this really, I mean, to me at least as a light worker, it feels heavy. It feels like I'm grieving. I have anger. There's heartbreak, and I want to say to all the light workers out there who feel the same, it is valid to feel the grief for the world, and I'm sure that many are processing even the ancestral and karmic echoes right now, and the records I feel like show that the global heartbreak or the global heart opening will come through maybe a collective heartbreak where we all find each other or find comfort in each other. And I also know that the compassion fatigue is real. Spiritual people, we have to learn how to put up energetic boundaries. So, yeah, we're here to help this world and we're here to help with the shift, but we also need to take care of ourselves. And I think as a light worker, sometimes we forget about ourselves, as to
oh, I so
what are we
true.
allowed to do, right?
And the more you do this work, the more empathic you become. And it's very easy to
Yeah.
lose the boundary when you're an empath, because that's what it means, is to not have a boundary and to be able to feel what other people are feeling, which is
Yes.
to me all the more reason to talk to your soul in the Akashic Records or out of the Akashic Records, because that's how you feel others' pain, but you don't take it on. And that's how you're able to actually help that other person. It does not help the world or any individual person for us to just be laid so flat with the heaviness of it. But as you say, important to acknowledge it, important to feel the grief or to mourn the grief, because anything that gets it moving, gets the energy moving, the emotion moving, that's so important. And when we have the consciousness to do that and to know it's not going to lay us low, and we have higher help from our own soul, I mean, that's valuable. Also, I want to
Yeah.
say something came to mind when you talked a moment ago about, do I focus more on what's falling away versus what I want? The thought came to me that it's all of us have graduated from some level of schooling, whether high school or college. And after you have graduated and you've gone through the graduation ceremony, that by default puts you in a state of change and a state of transition to go to the next thing. And for some people, that's a very quick transition. They go straight from graduating from school into a job or into traveling the world for a year or whatever they choose. For other people, there's a lot more uncertainty, like I don't know what I want to do, or I'm looking for a job, I can't find it, or I don't have the money to travel. Whatever that is, everybody who has graduated is in a state of transition. And I think we all know in that state of transition, even if we had a great time in school, high school or college, that it's not productive to say, oh, I wish I were back there because those times were so good, because you're not there anymore. You're in a new phase of your life, and that's what you want to focus on, because it's not even about productivity, although it is more productive, but it's where you find yourself. And it seems to me that likewise, we've graduated maybe in consciousness out of the way things were. We're in that transition. Why not focus on where we are now, but also where we want to be, to just put our focus there, because that's where we can do the most good for ourselves as well as for others.
I agree. I totally agree. Do you have any insight or thoughts about what's being born right now? I mean, I know we're in a shift. We're somewhere in between. We're not in anything good or bad, or I feel like we're like in this. We're like being thrown for a loop. But I wonder what's being born right now. When I tune into the Akashic record, what I'm hearing is that the new world is not coming, but it's already quietly being built by those of us who choose to be awake. And I wonder if that is true. I feel like we're more, what we're seeing right now, what's happening, it kind of pushes us more into like, I really would like to live in a community with like-minded people, or we need to be more plant-based. We need to be more this. We need to be more that. So I feel like it's already pushing us somewhere. But I wonder, what maybe we're not supposed to know the end result, and maybe the end result is always moving based on how we evolve, right? But I wonder, what do you think is coming? What do you think, you know, um, we can
I
expect or
think
should expect?
I think both are true. What you just said, that we are moving into something, and maybe that something is evolving or shifting. So I
Hmm.
think both can be true. Two things come to mind to answer your question. The first is, I think that what we're moving into, or at least we have the opportunity to move into as a collective, is a place of higher consciousness
That's correct.
in
Yeah.
human form, where we are literally bringing the expanded consciousness that our soul has in a higher dimension down more into this heavier atmosphere, or a heavier energy of the third dimension, or moving into the fourth or the fifth dimension. That's part of it. And I think that is very much in alignment with this whole idea of we're moving the Aquarian age, and there's more peace and harmony and so forth. But the other key word that comes to me, and it popped in as soon as you asked the question, so I'd like to think this is from higher guidance, is the word freedom. And what immediately came was, we see a lot of instances in our country with things that are happening lately, as well as certainly in other countries, of where that freedom is being oppressed. And there's nothing like having something like oppression of any concept, freedom and other concepts too, to make us yearn for even more. And so I think the freedom is very much at an individual level, the freedom to thrive, the freedom to love, the freedom to be exactly who we are and to strive for more. So there's individual freedoms, as well as a more societal freedom, of the freedom to, live a life where you're not always thrown in jail or always being oppressed by an outer force. It's the both of those kind of freedoms. And surely that freedom will abound when enough of us reach a higher consciousness. But
Yeah.
the way to the collective reaching a higher consciousness, I want to say for each of us to ask ourselves, how can we exercise even more freedom in our personal life? I think is a worthy question to ask, because I'm not just talking about freedom in kind of the dictionary definition of it. I'm really meaning, where can I give myself permission to be more free in being exactly as I am, or in expressing myself in ways that I'd love to, whether that's not holding back on my opinion about something or standing up for the weak or that kind of thing, but maybe it is expressing myself, I don't know, as an artist or as a potter, or expressing myself in some outward way. I know someone who just told me yesterday she's getting ready to go and work with a special project working with children with disability. Something
Mhm.
she's always wanted to do, but not known how. And she was living her life and raising her children, but now her children are grown, and that just really appealed to her. And an opportunity dropped into her lap to give some of her time to do that in a way that fits in with her life. And first of all, I think that's a beautiful thing to want to do. But secondly, I would put that as an example also of this freedom I'm talking about, where we're free to pursue that which makes our soul happy, makes our heart happy, brings satisfaction to the heart in a way that contributes to our good, but also contributes to the greater good.
That is so true. I feel like whatever's falling away is almost like giving us the freedom to be who we really want to be on a soul level. It's like, hey, all this doesn't work anymore and it's all going down anyway, so I might as well do what I want to do, right? But maybe that was the plan all along. Who knows? Maybe that was the universal plan all along. Um, to really bring out who we are, who our soul is.
Oh,
I mean,
that's well
sometimes that,
said.
yeah, it pushes us to, maybe it's a blessing. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe it's all about perspective. Yes, there's a lot of bad things happening, but what's the good that can come out of that? And so maybe that's something that it's something for me to hold on to when I have a rough day, right? Where I feel like it's just a never ending story of things happening. And I don't, as a light worker, where do I begin? What do I focus on this time? Or is the little old me enough to do something? But I guess, like you said earlier, even the slightest thing is doing something. So something is better than nothing. That's just kind of how I feel. And um, I guess a few tools that I thought or felt like is really helpful, and maybe you have tools that you can add, but like you said, so create something. So, like you said, you create your art, you create something that makes your soul happy, and maybe you find your soul aligned community where you find peace and support. That's something we all can do. We find each other. Maybe we start strengthening our intuition. I know you're big on journaling, and I know as a teacher, you're my teacher. You always, I remember you always in my ear, like, Bettina, you need to journal more. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. But I really think that's a helpful tool, just to just write down your thoughts. You meditate. You just go inward, like you said. And what I do also is I limit the fear-based media.
Hmm.
Not everything you see in the media is true, and I have to remind myself that yes, they're showing the worst parts of it, and it's good to be aware of what's happening. But at some time, I guess you just turn it off, and you ground your energy. And it's like, okay, we're moving out of this. There's something we all can do, even if it's just a little bit, to make this better. And I don't know if do you meditate? Do you have any kind of tools that you feel like help you on a daily basis?
Oh, absolutely. And I love what you're saying. And I will say, certainly I agree with limiting fear-based media. And I do have friends who are just like, that's it. I won't ever read the news again because it brings me down. And I
Yeah.
respect that choice. It's not a choice I want to make myself, because I do want to stay informed. But like other things that I'm really doing in my life, I'm putting structure around tuning into the news, so I only get it by reading, as opposed to it's being thrown at me on a, in the TV news. For example, I can choose which headlines to click on and not to. I put structure around now. How much time am I going to spend reading the news? I want to put a timer on, because when that timer, if I don't have a timer on, I could spend the whole evening. You go down rabbit holes, or you read
Yes.
another interesting article. So there, I am trying to put structure around that. But at the end of the day, the biggest tool that I use is that I try to ask myself one or two questions every day. And especially when I'm reading the news or just you're hearing about all the stuff happening in the world, the one tool I ask myself is the question, amidst all this, what do I know absolutely to be true? Because
Wow.
you can't really know if the things you're reading in the media, if they're really true or if they're speculation. You know, all those inside sources that are quoted might just be the writer of the article speculation. We don't really know. It's often what's true. But so I ask myself, what do I really know to be true? And that always gets me back to the soul. Well, first of all, I know that I am a soul, but I also have access to my soul and this incredible love, this all-encompassing love that doesn't shy away from pain. I mean, it's painful just to be in human form, but you know, we all have painful things. But I have I have access to divine consciousness through my soul that loves me. I mean, I also tell my other selves other things, but it always gets back to that. But the other question I like to ask myself a lot is, going back to what you said about just doing the best with doing good in the world, I ask myself, how can I be good today? Or how can I be of the good or for the good today? How can I serve good with a capital G today? That is very helpful for me to have a focus point, a rallying point, and then to focus on, you know, the good and what I do want to do good. And I have to believe that if I can remind myself of what do I know absolutely to be the truth, and
Wow.
how can I focus on good today or focus on the good today, I have to believe that that, first of all, keeps me from going down into more fear or more grief or depression or whatever the word is when you look at the outer conditions. But I also have to believe that keeps me in alignment with my soul and
Hmm.
with my higher consciousness. And I think that's why I'm here. That's why we're all here at the end of the day.
Yeah. Do you? I know you do, but I guess so. This question is really not necessary. But I feel like, do you open up your own records and you ask yourself what is mine to do in this world? I mean, I know you do because I know you. But just for the listeners, I guess what do you do that? I mean, do you use the records like often or frequently or?
I do. When I first learned how to work in the records 25 years ago, I did it every single day. And then I did it at least a little bit, usually at night because that's when I had the most time, but I would be sleepy. So then I would at least once every weekend take a deep dive when I wasn't sleepy and when I had more time and not in my workaday world. Now I certainly don't open them every day, but I do open them anytime I need guidance or have a question. And so, I don't know if I could put a number on that frequency, but so frequently.
Yeah,
But I
of
also
course.
want to say to your readers, especially because many of them are your listeners, don't know how to access their Akashic records, you do know how to access your soul, or you do at least know how to start talking to your soul because it's as simple as a conversation. I'll just say, "Hey, soul, I'd love to know about this or have more guidance on that." Or I'll often say, "Hey, soul, you know what I would love?" And then I fill in the blank. And to me, it's very powerful to hear the wisdom and guidance of the soul in the Akashic records. But outside of the records, I think nothing really is outside of the records. But when you're not accessing the records, you can certainly still talk to your soul. And that can include asking for guidance, but maybe it's more like, oh my gosh, my heart is racing right now with this thing that just happened. Calm me right now. It doesn't always have to be informational. It
Exactly.
can, in fact, as you know from when I teach Akashic classes, I like to say in the Akashic records, it's energy first and information second. And it's great to ask for information, but it's all about being in that high vibration in the Akashic records. And so talking to your soul, I think, is the most important thing you can do because you're cultivating a relationship, and it's a two-way relationship. You're cultivating the fine tunement or the ear to hear what your soul is, how it's responding, in addition to you voicing, from your human personality, but also your human experience to your soul.
Yeah. I also remember, and I know I teach my students as well because it's in the curriculum that you gave me when I became a teacher. I know I always say, or I teach that the records are not predictive and not prescriptive, and so I hold on to those two things when I do readings or when I go into my own records. And um, I guess really what I'm getting is that what I'm hearing from the Akashic records is that the future is fluid and responsive. So there is nothing set in stone. And like you said, we are the creators, and just thinking about that, it's changeable. You can change the future. You can mold the future into what works for you or what works for all of us. So with that said, I feel like it's really important that we all put the best version of ourselves out there every single day or every single time we can, because we need to also now do the self-care and set our energetic boundaries. um, but I also feel like knowing that we have this power, right? We're not powerless, we have this power. I feel like humanity does make it through this transition. We will make it through, and we will come out in a better place, in a better dimension, or better vibration. Um, and I also feel like what they're saying is that the next era is more conscious. Like you said earlier, it's more conscious, but I feel like it requires participation. You have to participate. You have to be aware. You have to be present, right? And I
Oh,
also
so
feel like, yeah, your personal healing work directly contributes to the collective timeline, to the collective outcome, I guess. So, you know, that's why I feel like we cannot forget ourselves, our self care, because our own healing work contributes to the betterness or the whatever you want to call it of humanity, where we're all going. And I feel like the records, they don't show me an ending, but they show a transformation. And maybe that's something that we need to hold on to, and like this transformation that we're going through, right?
first of all, the hope that a transformation for the good can happen. But secondly, I want to say an expectancy that it will. An expectancy is different than expectation, which already has its limitations in terms of structure. But an expectancy, that's not just being Pollyanna. It's like, I just believe things have to work out for the good. I don't know how they will, and I don't know when, and it might be centuries. It doesn't imply that it'll work out for the
It's
good in the
true.
next 5 minutes or five
Oh yeah.
years, but I want to be part of that. And what you just said about the future, first of all, I so agree with what you said, but to me, it really emphasizes why that phrase is so important. What you put your attention on grows. Because if for anything in the future, there are so many potentialities, then what you put your attention on is the road that gets paved. And energy is going to follow the path that is of least resistance, the path that is most paved. And I just that's why I'm in my own life, in my own mind, I'm putting so much emphasis on, well, what is it that I want to create? If I am a
Hmm.
creator, and I, like so many humans, are like, oh, I'm a creator, but there's responsibility and there's accountability and what? But I am a creator, and if I can step into that, but then even more importantly, step into, and as a creator, what do I want to create? Because there's power in that, and an individual inner power, inner authority, inner empowerment, but there's certainly also power in that outer synergy of the collective. And that's why when I read the news, I just told myself I'm going to read headlines as if I'm in prayer mode. And so every time I read a headline of something bad, I won't click on that link to read it. And I do read from multiple sources, of
Yes.
news, but I'll read it, like, I just immediately think, oh, God bless that person whose child is missing or whose parent is missing. I say a prayer in the moment, or for the person, the mother who just lost her child, or the country that's at war, whatever the situation is. I try to read it with a prayer in mind at that moment, but then I also have the prayer for myself, and may that not pull me down into fear or despair or hand wringing. Like, what can I do within my own inner sphere of empowerment or inner agency or authority, what can I do to help that thing that's happening on the other side of the world or on the other side of my own town? That I can't reach out and touch it physically, but what can I do? Because we are all part of this collective.
Yeah.
And to just draw in that point that we've already made, you and I, on this talk, is that I think we are here exactly to hold a frequency and stabilize it and anchor it in of just, first of all, we're not victims. Secondly, we have more power and more agency than we probably realize, probably act on. And and it is so much about taking action. And I really nodded when you said it's taking action a minute ago, but sometimes that action is a very soft inner action. It's just the openness. In my case, it's the trust of my soul. It's the faith to know that my soul is going to guide me through every single thing I'm going through, whether it's good times or bad times or lean times or, liberative times, no matter what it is. it that is taking an action too, but the action more is to stay open or to stay in trust or in faith or in belief. That's important, just as it's important to take outer actions to ask, how can I contribute to the good? And then take some solid action to contribute to the
Yeah.
good.
That is a good what you just said about you're reading it in prayer mode, because I noticed that about myself that I do that, but I didn't call it prayer mode. I guess I don't know what I call it, but um what I do lately, not lately, but it's I noticed it more and more about myself, even when I drive on the highway or drive home from work and there's an accident, in the past I would have said, "Oh my God, now I'm in traffic and yada yada yada, whatever." And now what I do is like, oh, thank God that it wasn't me, first of all. I know that sounds very selfish, but I'm glad that I'm still safe. And, I hope that those people are okay. I always feel like I'm trying to change my perspective instead of like, I don't care if I'm in traffic as long as those people are alive, if they're healthy and nothing happened to them. So I really feel like even as a light worker, there's small things you can do, and that will change your whole perspective of things. It's I mean, you're lucky it's not you, and when you see something
Yeah,
happen to somebody else, just send them a little bit of a prayer or good intentions, whatever you want to call it. It makes a difference. I feel,
oh my
it does make a
goodness, I
difference.
agree. So
And yeah.
another word for prayer mode is blessing mode, because
Oh
a prayer
yeah.
is a blessing. But you could, if you don't, or if your listeners don't like the thought of I'm in prayer mode, like when I'm saying, oh, bless that mother who just lost her child, or bless that country that just got bombed or invaded or whatever. I mean, it is, I'm really asking, for divine grace in that moment, but I'm also just asking for the blessing. So if that helps, and I agree with you on your example of something, seeing something in traffic. I feel it's not selfish to say I'm so glad it wasn't me, because that's a different form of just being in gratitude. You're grateful it wasn't you. What I will usually say is not only, oh, bless that person who I'm just driving by them right now with that problem, but gosh, I'm so grateful that there are first responders and that we
Yes.
live in a society that has first responder infrastructure, everything from paramedics to the hospitals, to all the things that enable someone who just really needs it to be able to get access to it. I love being grateful for that, because there are places where that's not the case, and there
Yes.
were certainly times in the history of humanity where that wasn't the case. So there's that. But I'm also so mindful of, not just grateful it didn't happen to me, but so mindful of the experience of that person. What comes to mind is when I drove home last Thanksgiving from Minneapolis, I drove through the whole state of Iowa that had just been snowed on, and it delayed my drive home by almost 3 hours because traffic was incredibly slow. And I saw more spinouts of cars on the side of the road from the icy conditions, more jackknife semi tractor trailer trucks along the highway than I've ever seen in my life. And so on the one hand, it was frustrating. The traffic was slow. But on the other hand, I just kept thinking, oh my goodness, God bless each one of these people who, when they woke up this morning and got on the road, they didn't think this would happen to them. They
Yeah.
thought they'd reached their destination. They didn't think any of this, like I just I bless them in what they're going through in that moment, whether they were hurt or not, because,
Mhm.
you know, we all live in a state of grace, but we all live also in a state of, how do you say, responsiveness to what's going on in our world and our weather and how our soul is guiding us through it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I really think that, changing our perspective to be more grateful for what we do have will help us. And even when you're a light worker, I only speak from myself, but you have days where you are down or you're just not feeling it. And that's okay as a light worker. It is okay. This is your boundary or your spirit letting you know it's time for you to rest as well. And I know, um, my podcast or whatever I do, it has been sporadic and I'm coming out of a challenging few weeks or months, but hey, here I am. And you know what? Up until 2 days ago, I didn't even want to do an episode today, but Spirit is like, no, Bettina, you better get off that couch. You better get up. You text somebody, find someone. You need to put yourself out there. So I'm listening to Spirit and I'm doing the work. So I think it requires participation, but it's also okay when you're not feeling it for a day or two or for a while. But, we all have those moments. But I really think for us light workers, it's also, we need to come back. We need to kind of snap out of it. And after the self care, we're all coming back, and this whole
Yeah.
weekend I was just not sitting on my couch, but I was doing mundane stuff. I was cleaning my house. I was cleaning out my basement. And the whole time I felt guilty. I feel like, I'm not doing enough. I'm just tinkering around in my house. And I'm like, well, at least I have the episode tomorrow with Grace. So that's something. So that made me feel better. I always feel guilty when I don't do enough, but I feel like I need to give myself grace too for some
Yeah.
downtime when I don't feel spiritual, when I don't feel
Yeah.
like I want to save the whole world, and I'm always coming back. People who know me, they know I'm always I pop back in and I'm back up and I'm doing the work eventually.
And that's really, I mean, it is what counts, as you said, but you used the word compassion fatigue a few minutes ago, and I
Yeah.
agree. On those days when you either feel compassion fatigue or you're just down, honor it, as you say, and turn that compassion in on yourself. That's what self-care is. But, whether you do spend the day on the couch or you go take a bubble bath or whatever your form of self-care is, I think
Yeah.
it's really giving yourself permission to nurture the parts of you that are feeling the fatigue, nurture the parts of you that kind of want to give up or at least not take on more, because when you do that, I think it really does, that's part of your resilience to help you bounce back stronger. So maybe that inner compassion and self-care helps you take one step back so that you can take two steps forward, because
Mhm.
you are here today. And
Yes.
I that that is so much, feels so much better to the heart and that, as well as the soul, than to be laid low by a heavy blanket that turns into depression or apathy or whatever, label you want to give it, because there's so much inaction in that state. There's so much just being frozen. And I think humans were designed to move and move the body, but also move energy, as well
Mhm.
as, as light workers stabilize it. And so I want to say, definitely give yourself some slack.
Yes.
Cut yourself some slack. I'm glad you do, because maybe it is exactly just as I said, taking one step back so that you could take two steps forward
Yeah,
again.
I agree. I agree. Well, what I do know is we're all coming out of it. It's a transition. We're all moving through it, and I have hope for the future. And
I
Grace, thank you so much for making time, even on short notice, so I can get rid of my guilt for not doing a whole lot this weekend, at least not a whole lot spiritual stuff or light worker stuff. But are there any parting words that you want to leave the readers or the viewers with, like as far as like some hope for the future or what you hear from the Akashic Records, what can give us hope, for what's coming?
Oh, thanks for asking for parting words. Well, I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. Every single person listening to this podcast is alive. And if you're alive, it's because your soul wants you to still be alive. There could have been probably a lot of exit points in the form of potential traffic accidents or whatever that
Yeah.
might be. But you're here now, and I'm here now, and you are here now, Bettina, as are your listeners. And that is in its own form of hope. Like, okay, I'm alive. So why am I alive? What am I here for? What can I contribute? Certainly you can hear those kinds of answers in the Akashic Records. And Bettina is both a teacher and a reader. I am both a teacher and a reader. We're more than happy to help anyone um, help answer those questions by tuning into the guidance of the soul. But even if you never turn anywhere, neither to one of us or the Akashic Records, my biggest parting word would be to say, cultivate that relationship with your soul.
Yeah.
Because in addition to giving so much guidance, it is absolutely your North Star, your orientation, if you will, of that's what gives you hope. To know you're alive, to know you are a soul and that you have a soul guiding you, but then to actually feel that. And it can, or at least my experience with my soul, I don't know about yours, Bettina, but mine, speaks in a still small voice, the way they say God speaks in a still small voice.
Yeah.
My soul never yells at me, never says, hey, I wish it would. And I've asked it sometimes, can you speak louder or more emphatically? At least my soul doesn't speak to me that way, but I have at least tuned my antenna. Like I know sometimes, oh, wow, that was the voice of my soul. I don't have to question at all. And I want to do what I heard because I want to, not because I'm afraid or I'd better do it. It's just how joyous, really how lovely and how joyous to cultivate a relationship with your soul that no matter what you do in the outer world, you're moving forward in
Yeah.
your inner world, you're moving forward on your inner path. And
Yeah.
everyone has access to that. Everyone can do that.
Beautifully said. And just for everybody out there, my soul does yell at me. So when I don't get off the couch, I do hear them yell at me. But that's between me and my soul, and we'll work it out. We have talks. Just so yeah, we'll have talks. But Grace, thank you so much for coming on. Your wisdom is always so enlightening and so powerful and so hopeful. And I'm really grateful. I'm grateful I know you. And for everybody out there, Grace is my teacher. She was my mentor, or she still is because I still ask her, about all kinds of stuff. But she never backs off. She's always very supportive. And if you want a reading with me, maybe my website is nightofthe.raven.com, and Grace is a wonderful, wonderful reader as well, one of the best that I know, and her website is akashicgrace.com. So reach out to either one of us or her. And yeah, thank you for tuning in and listening, and hopefully you have hope. But there's hope for all of us. So
Keep hope
all right,
alive.
keep hope
Thank you,
up.
Bettina.
That's it. Thank you so much. Bye bye.